One major aspect of mental illness is how it is perceived by society. Beyond its physical manifestations and how people act due to their mental illness, an important point to be made is how they are treated by surrounding people. The stigmas associated with people who are mentally ill can make their already difficult life so much worse. This discrimination can come in a variety of forms, whether they be difficulties with a family member or something as big as the inability to acquire a job. In How Algorithms Rule Our Working Lives, Cathay O'Neil, a data scientist and author, spoke of these discriminations built into society. She illustrated the story of Kyle Bem, a young man diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but who had received enough treatment to return to a normal, functioning life. He had been red-lighted by the personality test he'd taken when he applied for the job, saying that they were very much like the 5-factor model test, which he'd been given at the hospital. The 5-factor model describes the 5 main aspects of personality: openness, neuroticism, agreeableness, extroversion, and conscientiousness. For someone like Kyle, it would be extremely difficult to pass an exam like this. However, most major companies incorporate systems like this to weed out unlikely employees, preventing a lot of people who struggle mentally but could still function normally. Another problem in the perception of mentally disabled people comes from the words we use to describe them. In the case of intellectual disabilities, specific groups of people with difficulties in processing power and inability to function in society were labeled mentally retarded. Individuals referred to by the slang term retarded were distinguished from the average person in an effort to display their level of functioning. An adverse effect of this labeling turned this terminology into somewhat of a derogatory term. This depiction of people unlike the norm strengthens feelings of otherness, essentially promoting a society defined by its ableist and classist archetypes. In Depicting Disease, a theory of representing illness, Sander Gilman, a professor of psychiatry, emphasizes this so-called otherness. He said, "For the image of the patient can be a depiction of the other as diseased, but it can also serve as the alter ego of the observer, an alter ego that is the glorification of difference." We distinguish others by their characteristics, so in an attempt to remove ourselves from the unusual, we regularly categorize others by their mental capabilities. This is why descriptions of disease are often not accurate in explaining who these people really are. Stigmas affect people in a variety of forms, so when coming into contact with people who struggle with mental illness, remember that they are people too.
Edvard Munch was a very famous Norwegian painter born in 1863. Munch started his art career under a mentor who reinforced the importance of true emotional expression in artwork. During his travels following traditional schooling, Munch was influenced by many other artists of his time, specifically Van Gogh, who is thought to have influenced this emotional style of Munch again. The most famous example of Munch's mental illness appearing in his art is his painting The Scream. After creating this piece depicting an almost human subject with a swirling warm-toned sky, Munch described the experience which influenced this painting. He said that it represented the essence of human anxiety in the modern world. When talking about the experience that inspired this painting, Munch is quoted as saying, "I was out walking with my friends. The sun began to set. Suddenly the sky turned blood red. I paused, feeling exhausted, and leaned on the fence. There was blood and tongues of fire above the blue-black fjord and the city. My friends walked on, and I stood there trembling with anxiety, and I sensed an endless scream passing through nature."
Mental illness is defined as a health condition that can change a person's feeling, behavior, and/or thinking. Depending on the illness, it may affect all three. These effects can cause the person difficulty in functioning as well as distress. Just like many diseases, mental illness is very severe in some cases, while can be more mild in others. People with mental illness aren't necessarily ill-looking, especially if their specific illness is less severe. Some people who experience things such as confusion, withdrawal, or even agitation have more explicit symptoms that can be seen to the public physically. One mental illness is not worse than the other. It all depends on the person and how they experience and deal with the illness. Some mental illnesses are schizophrenia, ADHD, autism, depression, and OCD. The views of people without the illness may view the people with the illness in a negative way because of society and how they have been perceived over time. People today have a fear of mental illness. When diagnosed with mental illness, people seem to separate themselves from the title of having it. The person becomes ashamed or filled with confusion. When we hear or see someone we think that is mentally ill, we seem to judge or even be afraid of them. This is because through technology and things like film, mentally ill people are shown as a dangerous character or even the character who isolates themselves from the rest of the world. Negative stereotypes of people with mental illness have a long history in Hollywood and how they are shown throughout film. Stereotypical portrayals of people with mental illness are as old as Hollywood itself. A quote by Stephen H. Hyler. This artwork that I have created is titled Jokes on You. This drawing depicts the views of people dealing with mental illness. Each drawing represents a different symptom of having the illness and its effect on the person. The images represent how they feel as well as how others view them for being different. These illnesses are inspired by movies such as The Joker. Though the drawings don't show the Joker explicitly, the meaning of each piece relates to different experiences the Joker deals with throughout the movie, as well as the feeling of confusion and having people be afraid of him for being different. The Joker appears to have a mix of diagnoses, including pseudobulbar effect, a rare condition which leads a person to have uncontrollable laughter or crying. He may also have a psychotic illness, evidenced by his hallucinations about the subject of his affections throughout the film, which are depicted in my drawings as well.